Okay, hi guys, welcome to the Soul-Led Revolution with me, your host, Yolandi Boshoff, and I'm very excited to introduce Victoria Maxwell today. So she is the owner of the New Age Hipster. She is basically a beautiful soul, providing support and being an extreme creative in this world to starseeds, lightworkers, witches, etc. So Vix has written some amazing books, which we're going to speak about today. She's just brought out a new oracle deck called Angels Among Us, and I'm very excited to have you here today.
Oh, yay. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited.
Oh, awesome. Okay, so I want you to tell us a little bit more about yourself. How did you get into all the woo-woo? Where did you come from? Just a little bit of background for the listeners.
Okay, so in a nutshell, didn't really know how to put this in a nutshell. So I'm Vix. I run a business called New Age Hipster. I'm also an author. And I guess I first kind of got into the woo-woo stuff really early on. I remember being really interested in crystals and all the new agey stuff when I was kind of like in my early teens. I was really fascinated with that. So I've kind of been on the path for a really long time and kind of dabbled in different things along the way, got really into like Wicca in the mid-90s, around the time The Craft came out. That was kind of like one of my pivotal moments in my story of like just watching that movie way too many times and being like, I'm a witch, I'm going to claim this. And then, and then later I'm getting really freaked out because we were, we're doing all these spells and things started happening and it was like, oh my gosh, this stuff really works. And then I kind of had like went on a bit of a side tangent and joined the church for a little while. So I went into Christianity. It was kind of like, oh, what's this about? Is there anything good in this space? And then the rest of my journey was kind of just really eclectic and just kind of looking for spiritual connection, I guess, anywhere that I could find it really. And then I was kind of dabbling for many, many years, and I got the calling around 2011, 2012 to just kind of get back on the path, but get a little bit more serious about spirituality. And so I kind of got the tarot deck back out and I started actually reading some of the books that were on the shelf, and then the more I got into it, the more I just kind of started to get these little nudges of like, oh, maybe you could do some tarot readings for people. Maybe you could like start a blog and share your thoughts on this. And, it kind of just grew from there. And now here we are. That's the very short condensed version.
I absolutely love that. So, I mean, just like getting into this whole space of, because it's a bit about like finding that courage to step out into this new space and finding yourself and becoming that, right? And I think for me, just having followed you for a few years now and just seeing like what you've brought out and how things have changed, that whole like moving into these spaces and finding that courage, like, we're talking about this being a soul-led revolution. So like, where did you go? How did you get into that space of like really listening? So what's your practices around listening to your soul the whole time? Because I mean, you've moved into the space quite fearlessly. Just give us a little bit of insight about like, what is it? What's your why? How do you work with that?
Yeah, I love this question. I'm not really sure how to answer it, but I guess for me, I kind of got to a place, and I think many people on the spiritual path, or many people get into spirituality because they're kind of feeling lost, confused, life isn't feeling that great. You start ticking some of the boxes, but you're kind of like, well, I've got an okay job, I've got friends, I've got this, like things seem okay on the outside, but there's like that feeling of there's got to be more to life than this. And at the time that I was kind of getting really back into my spiritual practices and path, I was working in an environment that was really, I don't really like using the word toxic because I feel like it's a really negative word, but it was not a nice place to work. Like there was a lot of people with a lot of negative energy in that space. And I was just kind of feeling like so exhausted all the time. Like around that time, I started to learn about, what it meant to be an empath and how to protect your energy and all of that stuff. But I just kind of got to this point where it was like the fear of doing what I really wanted to do, the fear of kind of like, oh, maybe I should go for my dreams, felt less scary than staying where I was. It was like, that was kind of the, well, do I just stay living my life like this and kind of just feeling okay? Or do I say, you know what, actually, I'm going to try to live the life of my dreams and try to do what I really want to do in this lifetime? And yeah, it just kind of got to that place where like the fear and the pain of like not doing it is like, you don't want to live in that space anymore. And you're just like, well, if people don't like it, at least I'm living from my heart. I'm doing what I want to do. And, that, oh gosh, like it just feels like a completely different life, in so many ways. So I think that's the kind of easiest way to describe it for me. I didn't come at it from this place of like, well, I really believe in myself and I think I'm amazing and I'm going to go and do these things. It was more just like, I just can't stay where I am. I just have to do this without even really thinking about it, I think, a lot of the time. So it was probably if I'd given myself the opportunity to really think about it and be like, oh, well, if you start sharing online, this could happen, or this, whatever. If I'd really sat in that, then I might not have done it because I might have let the fear kind of, stop me. But yeah, I think there was just this time in my life where it was just like, I don't know if I'm allowed to swear on your.
Yes, you are.
Okay. But I did just got to that point where I was just like, fuck it. I've just got to do it and see what happens. And if it doesn't work out, I'll go back and do, whatever I was doing before. I'll get another job. I'll do something else. But yeah, I think it all kind of came from that space of like, there's got to be something that can fulfill me and make me feel like I'm living my purpose, I guess, basically.
Yeah. And then like in terms of your practices, because people are always like, well, how do I connect with my soul? How do I connect with my heart? Like, what, from your space, what advice would you give people? Like, what's your like go-to thing for like listening to your heart, basically?
So I have lots of things I like to do. I have meditation. I do Kundalini yoga. I also read tarot a lot and oracle cards. And that was one of the really big things for me that helped me to like train my intuition. I sort of like, I was learning tarot at the same time tarot was teaching me how to be more intuitive, if that makes sense.
Yes.
So that was like one of my really big practices early on. But I think one of the best things that I started doing was just like getting rid of the stuff that wasn't my soul voice and really starting to identify that's not mine, like that's actually not my own thought, that's not my energy, that's somebody else's stuff. And then the more I kind of worked with energy protection and I was like, no, that's not mine, not taking that in, then it was like suddenly sort of like, oh, okay, now I can find myself like under all of this, all the other shit that gets programmed into you, or you get told all of these things. And once you start to realize, I don't think that's mine, then it's like, oh, okay, now I can finally hear myself. Because I think that's massive for people, is like we've been so programmed by everyone that we've come into contact with our whole lives. And when we start to kind of peel that back, we can find our own voice instead of, I did this for many years where I was like, I'm just going to sit down and do a meditation that will tell me my life purpose and open my third eye, and I'll get my life purpose in this 20-minute meditation without, without doing much else. And then he'd be like, oh, I didn't get anything. Why am I not getting anything? But yeah, for me, like all of it, the soul, like hearing the voice of my soul, hearing my guides and angels, all of this stuff really started to just happen when I was doing all of the other work, instead of like, gotta find it, gotta work out what I'm supposed to do. It's like, just get rid of all the other shit and it'll be clear to you. At least
Yeah.
that's, you know, how it worked for me.
And I love that. So now, I mean, you were speaking about like working with the cards and like that really helping you and stuff. And I know you've just released this beautiful new deck of yours. So, I mean, like, tell us a bit about like what happened there. What was the creative process? Because I mean, you've basically used other people's oracle decks and their energy and everything, and that led you basically to finding yourself and, you know, like lifting all these layers. And then now you're creating an oracle deck. So like, tell me about that. Like, what was that like? Because this is all of your wisdom coming into the world and all of your intuition and you leading other people. So like, go into that. I want to know more about that.
Yeah, so it's kind of just like blows my mind really when I start thinking about it, and I think about the first oracle deck that I bought, the first tarot deck that I bought, and I was like, you know, had no idea at that point that, you know, I'd get to create a deck and that it will be out there and, you know, it will go to like #1 on Amazon and all that stuff. Like that was just not in my, like, I couldn't even imagine that. So it's been very, very cool to be able to create a deck. And there's really something so amazing about using a deck that you created. And I actually did create a little indie deck like many years ago, and it was just, I just made it with my own photos and keywords, but it was just like, oh, this is really like, this is nice, like this is really cool using your own deck. But basically what we did with the deck, like I'd always kind of struggled with this idea of angels and ascended masters and goddesses as being these like massive beings of light, and, you know, you'd see them like clearly in your meditations and they'd be in their robes with their massive wings and whatever. Like it never happened like that for me. For me, it was more like I go into meditation, and like I remember this one where I saw Archangel Raphael came in, and he was just like this guy in a white t-shirt and jeans. And I was like, who are you? And he's like, I'm Archangel Raphael. I was like, what are you wearing, man? Like, why are you like, don't you dress up for this? And he was just like, no, he's just like, you know, he's like, you don't need that stuff. It's like, you know, it's me. And we just appear to people in the way that, you know, they can best connect with us. And I was like, oh, okay. And then I had this like beautiful healing session with him, and it was just like sitting there with a friend, and I was like, this is really easy, this feels really good. So the angel deck kind of came out of that, because all the angels that we have in the deck and the masters and everybody else who's in there, it just look like normal people. Yes. And so yeah, that was kind of how it came about. But I think for me it was like all of the oracle decks that I'd used before always had these like traditional kind of looking angels, you know, like Christmas tree angels, or you know, they were beautiful and I love those decks, but they didn't feel like they were my angels, you know, like they didn't feel like they were quite right. And yeah, it's been really interesting, like the feedback from this deck, and so many people are loving it, and they're just like, oh, finally, you know, like some angels that look like us, because that was a huge part of it for me too, was like, I don't think that we're different from them, you know. I think that we're just, you know, we're in physical bodies. And one of the things that I found really interesting doing like readings and sessions with people over the years and going into their Akashic records and everything is like, so often you do a reading for someone and you're like, wow, you are like an ascended soul, like you are so high vibrational, you're just in a human body dealing with human stuff right now. So I loved the idea of creating a deck that was like, hey, maybe we can see ourselves as the angels as well, instead of kind of that separation that I think we've had for a really long time. So that was kind of the idea for the deck. Yes. And then of course I had to pitch it to the publisher and be like, hey, do you want a weird kind of like weird deck where the angels are dressed in jean jackets, and like, are you interested in this? But Rockpool were amazing, and they were up for it from the start. And yeah, they loved the idea, and so they were like so supportive, and yeah, it was great. And the artist that I got paired up with, Ellie Grant, she is just amazing. Like she totally got the vision, and she was just like, went with it. And yeah, so I don't know if that even answered your question, but that's kind
amazing. I'm like, I hope everyone like listens.
Like, what was your question again? About the
I can't even remember. We spoke about like your creative process, but I just want to say the thing that I love most here is like this thing that you mentioned in your answer was about like making it relatable, and actually like us starting to understand that like there is this connection, there is this unity between us and beings of light and all of that. And that for me is just like incredible, because you're bringing it down to this human level. And I mean, I love your deck because I follow all the readings you do with it online and stuff, and it's just so like, wow, like I can feel this, right? And it's just like like that Among Us thing for me is just amazing. So wow. And because it is like some of the decks you feel like, they there and I'm here, and it's so nice now, like I can have a chat, it's just like we're on the same level.
So. Yeah, and I think that's like that's always been a part of my spiritual work from really early on. Like my whole vibe of like the new age hipster vibe is like spirituality is for everyone. You don't have to be this, this certain type of person who dresses a certain type of way and like goes to the full moon meetups or like whatever. You don't have to be that person. You can just be like a normal, like any of us are normal, but you can just be in your sneakers and in your jeans and just like pop into the new age shop and be like, oh, this deck looks cool. It doesn't have to be this like giving your whole life away to the spiritual journey. It can be something that you just do for yourself. You just pull a few cards, and that can be your spirituality. We don't all have to be the same. It's just I think there is a real kind of, I feel like it's not there so much, but I know when I started my journey, there was this real feeling of like, if you wanted to connect with your spirit guides or angels, you had to go to someone who would do a reading for you, and they would do it for you. Yes. And it's like, nah, just get my oracle deck and pull a card, and you that's it. Like that's all you have to do now. It's like getting rid of that middleman. And I shouldn't really say that, because I still do readings and still like work with people. But yeah, I guess the thing is that you can still have readings, you can still have these sessions with people for guidance and support, but it's not like you have to. It's not like it's the only way that you can connect.
Yes, exactly. And I think for me with your work is like the inspiration comes with like, I can do this for myself as well. So you're showing up and going, guess what, guys, it's really easy. And it doesn't mean that people sometimes, like we all get stuck. I mean, I came to you for a reading, right? So I was just like, I need a reading from Vix. I don't know why. And we ended up connecting there. But I mean, so it doesn't mean that we don't have to go to other people, but it puts the power back in our hands. And I think that's, for me, when I look at your work, you are putting the power back in people's hands and into their hearts, and helping them to reconnect with their ability to connect with all the guides and like all that wisdom and everything. So for me, that's really beautiful. So it's so exciting. So I want to speak about your books now a little bit. So give us a bit of like, just tell us a little bit about the books and like what you've written, because I know you've done different genres. I've been following you for a while. So, I mean, some of it's like the stories, others are like about teaching stuff. So give us a bit of an overview around that.
Yeah, so I have a spiritual book that I wrote, which was published with HarperCollins last year. It's like, what? Time feels so weird now. It's like, I don't know when that was, last year. And that book's called Which Please Empowerment and Enlightenment for the Modern Mystic. And that book was basically just kind of like a how-to guide with all the basics. And it's all the stuff that I was kind of talking about before of like energy protection, how to start working with your guides and angels, how to start trusting yourself, how to get rid of the stuff that's not yours. It's kind of, I used to run a course called Woo Woo 101, which you can still buy on my website, but I used to run that live, and it was basically just like a 101 guide to spirituality. So much of that stuff is in that book. But I also write fiction, which is something that I'm so passionate about. So I have 2 books out as we're recording this, but when this comes out, I should have the whole trilogy finished and available. The series is called the Santolsa Saga, and it's basically a time travel young adult romance series. And it's really people kind of are a bit like weird about it sometimes, because they're like, Vix, you write fiction, like how does that fit in with all your spiritual stuff and your tarot? But in these fiction books, like we kind of explore a lot of these same topics and concepts. So the first book especially is really about, is there destiny? Is there free will? How do you go back in the past and still have free will? Like, how does that even work? Is everything destined? So that's kind of the, the questions that come up in the first book. Then in the second book, we kind of look into the idea of changing timelines. Can you shift a timeline? Can you change things in that way? And the third book kind of just goes all over the place and brings it all together. And it's there's so many like woo-woo concepts in it. It's basically, it's very witchy. It's got witches, nuns, time travel, timelines, destiny, free will, all this stuff that I think about and love all the time. So it's like, I'm going to write a novel and put it all into that. So that's been really amazing to kind of be, doing that on the side of all this other spiritual stuff that I've done. But there's definitely going to be more novels coming, because that is a really huge part of what I feel is my purpose work, even though those novels at the moment, I'm not Stephanie Meyer, I'm not J.K. Rowling. There's a small amount of people that love them, and that's great. But for me, it just feels like I can't not write them, like they just have to come out of me, and whatever they end up being, however successful, whatever is, whatever happens. But I just feel like it's my dharma to write these weird young adult novels, and so I'll keep doing it.
But I mean, there's something so special about that, because for me, like when someone picks that up and it opens up that little doorway into this world that people aren't necessarily familiar with, for me, that's where the magic lies, right? It's just like when we get to step through there and go, oh, I haven't thought about this, and then your mind starts going. And I love the fact that, it's always, people kind of go, oh, it's just a novel, but it's channeled, like it's your soul speaking. And that for me is where the magic lies, right? And then whoever picks that book up gets a piece of that, and you open up another door for them. So I always think, like as authors, people are a little bit dismissive, but I'm like, man, this is freaking magic. There's shit happening in the background there with the people who read these books, and you're opening up ways for people to connect deeper with themselves and like find themselves again. So there's definitely, I love that. Oh, and I think for me that again, that then like full circle back to the whole soul-led thing, because your soul speaking all these beautiful words to you brings you into contact with these people, and it just, it opens up these things. So it's really amazing. Okay, so when is your book launching? Just give us some dates also.
I don't know exactly, because my fiction is self-published.
Yeah,
I can kind of just publish it whenever I want. But the final draft is finished. So now I'm just kind of going through the process of formatting. I'm just creating the cover. So I was hoping that it would be out by the end of, what is it now, October, but it might be early November.
Fabulous. Okay, so like, follow Vix on Instagram or Facebook and just go and check, because like the book's going to be there soon. So that's really cool. So is there any advice, just for our last question today, any advice that you want to give to anyone who wants to get into this whole space of like being a creative, like connecting, like, like looking at your journey? What's the one piece of advice that you'd give to people out there?
Ooh, okay, so the message that's coming through like really, really clearly is that you already know what to do. And I think this is one of the things I feel like I say to people so often in readings and sessions. You know, people come and they sit there for like 45 minutes and I don't know what to do with my life. I don't know what I want to do. What's my sole purpose? And then, you know, you talk to them for a little while, and then at the end of it, you're like, so it sounds like actually you already know what to do. You're just not trusting it, and you're just not taking the steps to do it. Yeah. So I think, you know, that that's been something that's been really kind of a like a guide for me, I guess, on my journey, because it's so easy to doubt yourself, and it's so easy to get the guidance and be like, oh, I really want to write that book, or I really want to create that deck, or, you know, whatever your thing is, but I don't think I'm good enough, or maybe the time's not right, or, you know, whatever. Like, we're very good at talking ourselves out of things, or, you know, oh, maybe that's not my guidance, maybe that's just my ego or whatever. But I really believe that all of us know, like, we know deep down, if we get really honest with ourselves, like, we know what the thing is that we're supposed to be doing. And maybe it won't work out. Maybe you'll write a book and no one will read it, or maybe you write a book and it won't be very good. Write the next book. You know, maybe it's not the first one that's going to be the thing, but it's going to be the second or third that, you know, people really start connecting with. But if you don't do that first one, you can't get to, you know, the place where you really want to go. So I think that's the takeaway, I guess, is like, you already know what to do, you just need to do it.
Okay. Oh, I love that. Because the thing is, like, and you're right, it is like, I think inherently we always know, we just want someone else to tell us what we already know.
Yes, I love doing that in readings too. People come for readings and they're like, you know, with a question or whatever, and it's like, you can tell they've already kind of made the decision, but they just want you to confirm it for them. Like, can you just pull a card and just confirm that this is the right path for me? And it usually is, like 99% of the time. It's like, yeah, you already know.
I love that. I just want to, and just before we end off, I just want to speak about trust a little bit, because you brought that up, like trusting in yourself. So, I mean, that's one of those things, like, it's like, you know, when you ask someone, do you trust yourself? It's always like a bit like, so my question to you now is, like, in terms of trusting yourself, because you obviously do, because you've created all these beautiful things. So like what's the secret to trusting yourself? What's your secret to trusting yourself?
That is such a great question. I think the answer to that for me is, if you can't trust yourself, then who do you trust, or what do you trust? Maybe you don't trust your personality. Like, maybe Vix, sometimes, you know, she's not that great. Like, she, like, you know, oh, Vix messes up sometimes. I don't know if I always trust her. But maybe you can trust your higher self, or maybe you can trust the universe, or you can trust your guides, or you can trust your angels, or maybe you can just trust your own journey and trust that you're going somewhere, even if it doesn't make sense right now. So I think it's like, it is hard to trust ourselves. Like, it's really hard to create something and be like, oh, I bet that, you know, people are going to love this. There's always that feeling of like, I have no idea. Like, when we launched the deck, I was just like, I don't know, like, how people are going to react to this, because it's different. It's a bit weird, it's a bit different. People might not get it, they might not see my, you know, what I was trying to communicate, they might not receive that. But I just kind of got to the place with it where it's like, well, if it wasn't meant to be, it wouldn't be. And if the universe didn't want me to do it, they wouldn't have made it happen. They wouldn't have helped me make it happen. You know, obviously I did the work to get it done, but there were lots of things that needed to kind of come together in order for that to be in the world. But yeah, I think the other part of that is like practice trusting yourself. That was a huge thing for me, was like, I started to feel like, oh, I think that might be divine guidance. I think that might be it. And I was like, I'm going to just trust that and see what happens. And the more I did that, the more I realized, actually, when I trusted that voice, things usually worked out. And if they didn't work out, I learned something in the process, you know, so I could say, okay, I can see why they wanted me to do that, even though it didn't go the way I wanted it to. So practicing, like, just trust yourself a little bit, you know, like just do little bits at a time. You don't have to completely, you know, you don't have to write a novel and put it out into the world if you're not ready. Maybe write some poetry and share it on Instagram and see how that feels, you know. So yeah, like just baby steps and just practice trusting yourself, because it is hard. It's really hard. Like, we don't live in a world where we're taught to trust and believe in ourselves. Like, we have to kind of really work on that if that's you know, something that we want to do. So yeah, I hope that answered that question.
Totally, I love it. And it's so nice. It's such practical guidance as well. I'm like, that's it. That's exactly it. So, oh, no, it's been so wonderful speaking to you. This has been absolutely amazing. So thank you just for being so open and sharing so much with us today. It's really awesome. So if people want to follow you, look at your work, get some of your awesome books and buy that deck, where do they go? Where's the best place to get hold of you?
So everything is on my website. So that's newagehipster.co. If you just go to Google and you type in New Age Hipster, you'll find me there. I'm on Instagram. I am New Age Hipster 333 on Instagram. I'm also Victoria Maxwell author on Instagram. So I've kind of got the New Age Hipster page. I do like lots of readings and I share lots of different tarot decks and things like that, and spreads for people to use with their cards. And on my Victoria Maxwell author page, I just share more about like my books and my writing process and things like that. So those are kind of the places that I hang out the most at the moment.
Awesome. Okay, so it has been absolutely amazing speaking to you. And yeah, I just thank you for like showing up on this planet and doing what you're doing, because it's really helping so many people and it's making such a big impact. So it's been amazing speaking to you. So thanks for your time and just all the awesome energy that you shared today, and I really appreciate it. So thank you so much.
Thank you, and thank you for everything you do as well, and all of the things that you're creating. I'm really excited by everything that you're doing too. So thank you.
Awesome. Okay, great. So yeah, thank you so much for being here today. And if you were listening today, I hope you enjoyed the show. And in 2 weeks' time, watch out for the next one. Awesome. Thank you.